Rob, big run by Gibson. You throw an interception in the end zone. Like, there's 3 opportunities there that you should have scored points. And now, like, that's something that I've always kind of had a hard time with as a player and as a coach now, is you did all these good things, but you didn't finish, right? So are you good, or is it the finishing that makes you good? And so I think that's something that, again, you got to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, like, what can we do better? How do we improve in this area? Because ultimately, like, there's no correct answer. There's no right answer. But it's like, what is our solution to this issue? What do we feel most comfortable with? And when I look at the film, especially from last week, I know the score was not good, but the performance on the field, you're kind of like, man, if they don't turn the ball over 5 times, like, they're okay. But then, it's like if my aunt had a beard, she'd be my uncle kind of thing. Like, it doesn't really, like, it doesn't work like that. So I think that's something that I'm always kind of negotiating as an analyst, as a coach, as a player.
Right.
Is what is real, what is not. And I think they can both be true. They did some really good things. They also did some really bad things. And until they limit those bad things, like, they're just going to be an average offense, I guess is what I'd say.
Right, for sure. So the question is, how do they then elevate what they have? And that's what I want to get into next, specific to the matchup against Philadelphia. Right. Because I do think some of the turnovers, for instance, for Sam Howell, I think EB can help him out a little bit. I think there's some other facets of the offense that can help Sam out a little bit and make his job a little bit easier. We'll dive into that next. It's the Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. We're live at Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. You can come join us in person starting at 11, and we're live until kickoff here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. is the Take Command pregame show live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. I am Greg Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. Streaming live now on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan. A little late on the stream getting going this morning. Apologies there, but glad that you have joined us and found us for this preview of the Commanders and Eagles coming up at 1 o'clock. The game on Fox today. Joe Davis, Daryl Johnston, and their crew on the call. Old Moose. I don't think you wouldn't have played against Moose. You would have. He was long retired. You probably called a bunch of your games.
How do you think how old?
I was trying to remember how old he was, not
he's
more how old you were. But he definitely called a bunch of your games back in the day.
Yeah, he's an old duck, but I really enjoy his calls for whatever reason. I just feel like he's got
good.
a very soothing kind of delivery, and he's got enough experience to kind of make, oh yeah, that's nice. So
yeah, he does a good job. Joe Davis does an excellent job as well. And so one of the things that I want to talk about, here's my analysis for today that I would like to run by you, sir.
All right.
I think that Eric Bieniemy can make Sam Howell's job easier.
Okay.
And I think that is important to make sure that the turnovers get limited and the sacks get limited, which are the gigantic bugaboos that have absolutely plagued this offense so far through 3 games, to the extent that it has been plagued, specifically in the Denver game, not so much. But even early in that game when they had trouble, like some of that stuff cropped up. I think it is important to make Sam's reads easier and to have him have to make less of them during the game.
Yeah.
So that is going to mean running the football.
That's good analysis.
Running the football a little bit more. I mean, hey, sometimes
we're getting there. We're getting into it now. So.
But I can go deeper off the bat here, but I would like to let you talk as the guy who played 10 years in the league. Just kind of set you up here. Just fired a pass into 82's chest, and we got a drop there. Drop for Paulsen.
I'm with it. I'm pushing you to get better is what I'm doing.
As that was happening.
Yeah.
So they gotta basically the if you want the really high level take is Eric Bieniemy's got to stop calling a game for Patrick Mahomes and start calling it for Sam Howell. So Mahomes, sure, drop back 50 times a game. I don't care. Make as many decisions as you want. You're going to avoid sacks. You're going to avoid turnovers. You're going to do awesome stuff because you're Patrick Mahomes. This is career start number 5 for Sam Howell. And I do not feel like yet, again, it's also game 4 for Eric Bieniemy as the OC here. So this is a process that will take time to not be the total hot take artist about it. But I do not think that Eric Bieniemy has quite adjusted yet from Mahomes to Howell. And I think that the faster that gets figured out, the better for this offense.
See, part of me wonders, I was thinking about this earlier, part of me wonders if he has. And what I mean by that is, there are some quarterbacks, we've been talking about play action, we've been talking about quick game, we've been talking about, screens and all, RPOs, all this kind of stuff. And, what if Sam doesn't like play action? Or what if he doesn't see play action well? One of the things as a coach at the high school that's really illuminated is all these things that should help sometimes don't help, right? For example, one of the things about play action, one of the negatives of play action is you add protectors, right? You got to build this big wall in front of the quarterback. And when you've got a tall kind of statuesque quarterback, they can see very definitively over the top of that sucker, right? But Sam is not a big man, so you got it right there with the wire. Okay,
yeah, we're good.
Yeah, all right.
Just trying to figure out what's the most comfortable.
Yeah, isn't that weird? That's a weird bit, the wire. Anyway,
yeah.
So I would say, and sometimes because Sam's not a big guy, maybe he doesn't like it. Maybe he can't see it, and that's something that I hadn't really thought about. Is maybe he can't see it very well. And when you're in that 5-step in the gun, you have a little bit better vision to the concept. And so I'm not saying that he shouldn't do more play action, but maybe Sam doesn't see it as well as you'd hope he sees it, right? Maybe the quick game, because the offensive line, they used to coach the offensive linemen to cut down the defensive ends and hit the slants. Maybe he can't see those quick slants because of the proximity of the offensive line. So maybe he has kind of cultivated this game plan that fits Sam Howell. And we don't know because they would never come out and say definitively that this is not, that Sam doesn't like doing these things. You know what I'm saying? But that's something that I was thinking about the other day. Is and it's something I want to run by you too. Is because when I think about it, I'm maybe they've talked about doing this stuff. And maybe it just doesn't cook for Sam the way it cooks for Kirk Cousins, for example.
So that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that was a question that I wanted to ask you for sure today is Sam's height becoming a problem? I feel bad saying that, but there's also just, the entirety 104-year history of the NFL or whatever we're at this point.
Has it been that long? That's
insane. They had the NFL 100 a couple years ago, so however long that was, plus that to now. Where quarterbacks this size don't work.
Yeah.
And, there are rare exceptions from your Russell Wilsons to your Fran Tarkendins to your whatever. But they're few and far between. Yeah. The 6'1" and under quarterback. And again, shout out to our guy John Kime, 2 for 2 on the segments here. But he talked about on his pod and in his writing this week that the interior offensive linemen feel that they need to set a little bit shorter because Sam's got to have the ability to see over them. And if they give up an extra yard of pressure, then that's a big deal for a guy who's 5'11", 6 foot versus if, say, Jacoby Brissett was back there at 6'4" or whatever Jacoby is, where like, okay, yeah, I can still see. Yeah. That's the yard or not between being able to see.
Right.
And so I think from the quick game stuff, like you said, like, can you see over the tackles, and is there a window to throw it? I do think that this is something that, like, we don't need to make a huge deal out of it, but like, it's worth wondering aloud and it's worth mentioning is that, and by the way, he's had balls batted in every single game this year.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if this is on some level an issue that is popping up, and you go, well, shoot, maybe there is a reason why quarterbacks this size never succeed in the NFL or with rare exception.
Well, I think Drew Brees is kind of the case study, right? And I think we've talked about Drew Brees a little bit on the show. I know I've talked about him a little bit with Kime, but like one of the things that when I was in Chicago, my tight end coach there was the assistant O-line coach in New Orleans, he's now the OC in Miami, who kind of is under Mike McDaniel. So awesome, he's doing a great job. Kudos, Frank. But one of the things he talked about when he was with Drew Brees in New Orleans is one of the things they talked about with the offensive line at nauseum was finding the right personnel to support the way their quarterback wanted to throw the football. And so what they did is they went out and they drafted like Jair Evans and, gosh, the other guy's name escapes me, but basically both of them weighed about 350 pounds, and they could just set dudes at the line of scrimmage and then almost like run block them. They called it setting the dish. So you'd set them where they were, and you would widen them horizontally as opposed to kind of the traditional pass set where you're kind of losing ground vertically. And basically what they did is they said, we are going to – and so the tackles would do the same thing. Set the dish is what they called it. So they'd make these really wide pockets, almost like an outside zone version of the pocket, so that the quarterback could have a throwing lane to the left of the tackle's head and the right of the tackle's head, and then the left of the guard's head and the right of the guard's head. And that's how he threw balls through these lanes that they cultivated and created for a shorter quarterback. Now, Drew Brees is going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I'm not comparing Sam to him. But when you're doing that, and, the thing that John said about setting a tighter pocket, like, that's 100% true. Like, if you have a smaller quarterback, like that's one of the benefits of, like, Josh Allen, is you can give up a pressure. You can have someone in your lap. If you're short, I can't see over the 6'6" offensive lineman, right? I can't see over it at all. But if I'm 6'6", I can see over that. I can make that stack shoe-esque throw. I can do some things that are really impactful, from a quarterback standpoint. I think that is also kind of what you're working through is like, how do I maximize my quarterback's skill set? He's got a big arm, can throw really well. How do I maximize his vision? Let's get him in the gun. Let's get him away from that group. And so when I look at like play actions and things like that, you can do gun play actions, obviously.
Right, but they're not as effective.
They tend not to be as effective because the quarterback because the defense can see. But I would even argue that maybe it's good to throw some of those in just for the O-line so they can kind of get a little run cell as they're doing it. So I think there's a lot of things here, a lot of what ifs in terms of cultivating an offense for Sam and for his height and for what he is. And you say, well, maybe they are kind of in the best spot for him, despite some of his other deficiencies in terms of holding the football.
Yeah, I think the holding the football thing, though, you got to figure it out. Our stat of the week that I will probably bring up at least once an hour here is
what is it? Let's hear it.
It's that the sack to pressure ratio for Howell.
When you pulled this on the show, on the podcast today, I was like, this is Craig Hoffman at his best, boys and girls.
I mean, yeah, me reading PFF's Twitter page. Or I think Grant might have retweeted it, so shout out to GP. But the different, like, when Sam Howell is under pressure, he takes a sack 39% of the time.
Which is very high.
Patrick Mahomes is under 3%. So literally the best and worst in the league. So that figuring out how to
he's actually
do that.
the worst at that's his. That's
Howell's it's like by 5 or 6%.
Oh my gosh.
He's the worst in the league. So he's got to figure that out. Part of that is Sam. Part of that is all this stuff that we're talking about, and finding the magic formula will ultimately lead to, or whether or not they find it, how quickly they find it, will lead to success or not. All right, when we get back, we'll talk to Kevin Sheehan here on the Take Command pregame show live on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take Command pregame show live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen, and joining us now is Kevin Sheehan, of course, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. That is weekdays, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mr. Sheehan, how are you, sir?
What's up, boys? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
You doing all right, bud?
Yeah, I'm just sitting here watching a little football, watching a little Ryder Cup.
Oh, look at you.
Desmond Ritter, he looks horrendous. I know it's early, and I'm sure in Atlanta they're talking about some of the same things. It's like, just give it time, give it patience. But he's pretty bad right now.
It's not going great.
Well, he had what was that? 2 weeks ago, he had a solid game, and then this game, we just saw a stat line. He was like 1 for 10 for 5 yards.
Yeah, he just threw a pick six when they finally got something going, and he's got weapons.
Yeah,
they got a lot on that offense, and Bijan Robinson looks great so far.
Dude, he is so good. He's good at football.
Yeah, good analysis there.
Thank you.
As you told me last
yes.
segment. All right, Kevin. So when you we started talking the show today about the idea of this being a bounce back game. You put a lot of stock, or they put a lot of stock into last week's game, the measuring stick, etc. You go out, and while the performance might have been better than the final score, ultimately the final score is 37-3. How much importance do you put on this game this week against a division opponent, considering what happened last week?
Well, I think after last week, I didn't really feel that encouraged by much after last week. In fact, I think it was in how discouraging it was with respect to the offense and the protecting of the quarterback and the quarterback's decision making, especially a week after it was so encouraging. But that's the nature of this right now. It's going to be up and down. I really think, I talked to both of you guys on the radio show on Friday. To me, it's just really obvious. We've got to see a major progression in the protection of the quarterback. It hasn't happened in the first 3 weeks, really. I mean, other than that 2-quarter, 25-minute stretch against Denver, and, maybe we learned something about Denver last week. It's not sustainable to allow your quarterback to get sacked 9 times, hit 15 times, and pressured 27 times in an NFL game and expect to be competitive. So I'd love to see progress today against a really good defensive team, a team that, can confuse you, can get after you, doesn't need a lot of extra help with what they have on their front four. And I'd love to see let's graduate to not getting sacked, every third drop back and not getting pressured and hit. There's so many different ways, and Logan has spelled them out. Everybody has this week. I had Cooley on the podcast, Jay on the podcast, and they're just ways that they can avoid that kind of result. And hopefully we see that today. And if we do, they're good enough defensively, as we know, to be in a lot of these games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously the protection's a huge thing. In terms of matchup, is there a matchup you think is most relevant to them kind of getting that protection done? Obviously, I think about the guard. My mind is drawn to the guards versus the defensive tackles, but is there something you're thinking about specifically in that matchup?
It's not so much a matchup as it is just figuring out a way where we don't have dropbacks and the requirement for a lot of time. You mentioned something to me on Friday, which I thought was really interesting, and it's true. Anytime you see any NFL team in empty set, it's automatically a requirement for the quarterback to get the ball out quickly. So I wouldn't mind seeing some of that. Now, they've got to get separation. The receivers do. They've got to be open. But if not for that, I want to see the check down hit. I think Logan, we talked about the 3rd and 19 early in the game. I mean, that is in the NFL, it's a draw, it's a bubble. It is an immediate look downfield, hit the check down, get 10 yards, kick the field goal. And there were check down opportunities in the Denver game. Remember when they went 3 and out a couple of times at 21-3 or 14-3. And I'd like to see him just get some of that easy stuff so it doesn't result in a bad play. So maybe matchup really is Sam Howell, taking the easy way out of avoiding a bad play. like to see that today.
Kevin Sheehan is with us here on the Take Command pregame show on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980's Burgundy and Gold Game Day. One thing that actually Logan and I didn't talk about at all this week, but I know you mentioned, like, Jay, for instance, was on your show, and I know he talked about this a little bit. Would you have, like, are you okay with how they handled Sam last week, leaving him in the entirety of that game? Do you have any worries long term about a guy accumulating that much, for lack of a better word, damage in one game?
I thought Ron's answer on that was actually pretty acceptable to me. It seemed pretty obvious that they want him to work through it. I think the big thing in leaving him in is they allowed him to continue to take a beating by dropping him back. And maybe, down 30-3 or 30-0 and 37-0, you hand the ball off a few times there. And I guess the one decision they did make on 4th and 19 is they didn't drop him back one more time to take a beating. Instead, they decided to avoid the shutout and kick the field goal at the end. But I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes that stuff's overrated unless you continue to put him in harm's way. I think the one thing we do know about him, he's tough. He's a competitor. You saw that at North Carolina. We've seen it in the very few moments we've had to watch him here at the professional level. I don't think, continuing to be out there and getting their ass kicked was going to bother him. I just was more concerned with the play calling that put him at risk physically.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this game, I mean, is there what would you like to see from the offense? I mean, you mentioned the pressure. Would you like to see B-Rob get more touches? Is there something, like, if you're the offensive coordinator, Kevin Sheehan, that you're like, I would do X, Y, Z?
Well, I think I hate saying this because I don't mind the philosophy that Eric Bieniemy is trying to instill, which I think Ron, for the most part, admitted it earlier this week, which is he wants to be a pass-first team. That's the Andy Reid way. And the idea of this team being balanced, or Eric Bieniemy calling a balanced game, just isn't really, I don't think, what he wants long-term. And I think it's reasonable. I mean, in the NFL today, you've got to be a pass-first team if you want to win big. There are lots of ways to skin the cat, as they say, but to win big over a period of time, you got to be able to throw the football. With that said, they've had a real struggle in throwing the football in drop-back situations, and so I would love to see some Brian Robinson Jr. And I know that front is stout, but they went in there last year, and Jalen Carter wasn't there, understood, but they ran the ball 49 times, not at a high average yards per clip, but they allowed, a lot of that to open up some of the easy stuff for Taylor Heineke in that Monday night game. I think you've got to be balanced, and if it's not balanced, it's got to be a lot of quick game today. Avoid the bad plays, stay on the field, punt if you have to punt. I think defensively, Jack Del Rio's had their number a little bit the last few games. Maybe get into a game ends up being 20-16 one way or the other with a chance. All
right, what else do you like around the league today from the gambling side of things?
Asking? I gave you Denver last week.
Because you're better at this than us.
You did have a tough time last week. That's not you, though. We know you're better than that.
Look, the house. Although did you see the story this week? I doubt you saw the story, Kevin. I'm sure you did see the story. DC's betting program lost over the last quarter. Like, they lost money. The house lost.
When I would absolutely double down on them and project that they probably won't lose too often.
No.
But you never know who's running it and how it's working. Last week was a beauty. I liked Washington, I liked Denver, and I liked Chicago.
Whoopsies.
The 3 big blowouts on the board. I did like Cleveland. That was nice. I like Tennessee today. I think the Titans at home bounced back. And Cincinnati, even though they won that game, Burrow still isn't right. But the public thinks they're right, and that line's less than 3. I would buy the half point and take Tennessee plus the 3 at home.
All right, and then who do you like in Washington and Philly?
Well, I like Philadelphia to win the game, but I think it should be a competitive game. Defensively, Del Rio's stopped the run against Philadelphia. Hurts will put it up for grabs a couple of times. I don't believe in the idea that Jalen Hurts can't throw from the pocket. I've heard that a lot this week. I think he was the better quarterback actually in the Super Bowl, and proved last year he can throw from the pocket. But that's probably the way they hang in there. Is they stop the run, they force Jalen Hurts to beat him, something like 22-17 Philly, but a competitive game.
All right,
which will make everybody feel better coming off last week.
It would. God, if they get blown out, that's not going to be a very fun 5 days. Or I guess the good news is they play Chicago on Thursday. So playing Chicago is always great for morale, unless that goes. We're not even going to go there. We're not going there.
Next Thursday.
That is a Paulsen Bowl.
Yeah, the Paulsen Bowl. I mean, I root for the team that pays me currently, and that would be the Commanders.
As you should.
Yeah. Do we have 3 Paulsen Bowls again? We had like all 4 last year.
All 4 last year, yeah.
With the Texans and Niners and the Bears. But I think San Francisco's on the schedule.
Yeah.
So 49ers are on the schedule. Yeah.
That'll be a tough one.
Yeah.
The 49ers and the Dolphins on the schedule a little bit later on in the year.
Yeah.
Old Mike McDaniel's there, huh?
Not think about that. We're focused on Philadelphia. Kevin Sheehan with us every week here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan on Burgundy and Gold game day. Kevin, thank you, sir, and we will talk to you on Thursday.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin Sheehan, of course, 10-1 on the Team 980, and don't miss the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast either. Always great guests and great conversations on that show. When we get back here on the Take Command pregame show, normally we do coach speak, but we want to dive a little deeper into the protection. So, sorry, Ron. Sorry, EB. Sorry, everybody. On that, your sound bites are not going to be played today.
Right.
Instead, we want to take a little bit deeper dive into some of the protection issues. We started talking about it a little bit, but there's a couple of other potential solutions to the protection issues that the Commanders have been having that Logan wants to dive into. So we'll do that next here on the Take Command pregame show. It is the Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. I'm Craig Hoffman. That very tall man who is standing and re-entering the frame on YouTube as he sits down is Logan Paulsen. We are live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Quiet for now, but the doors are open in 10 minutes if you want to come hang out with us in person leading up to kickoff of Commanders and Eagles. All right, Logan. So when you talk about the protection, you know, we talked earlier about how maybe Sam's height is affecting some things and how maybe the interior of the line being a little bit more stout can help him have a little bit more space.
Yeah.
But we talked a little about play action. Things like moving the pocket, things like whatever protection calls. I don't know. This is your area of expertise, so I don't want to throw out a bunch of hypotheticals and waste your time. What can EB do and the offensive line and whatever else is involved do to try to help keep Sam Howell upright?
Well, I think like the thing about protections that's going to be fun to talk about in this context is like it is just a puzzle. Like you have tools. It's like chess basically, right? It's chess that you're playing with human beings. And so when I look at this, I say, well, what does EB want to do? He wants to throw the football. So how do we make that more effective and create like these solid pockets? And so one of the things that comes to mind immediately is like, can we incorporate some type of slide protection? So that's an easy way. We always talk about kind of giving the rusher like a different look, you know what I'm saying? Giving them a different kind of perspective. And so what that does is usually, we've talked about this before, in a 5-man pro, you're going to send the center to the most dangerous interior pass rusher. This week it'll probably be Jalen Carter, right?
Yep.
We're going to slide to him. He usually lines up on the offensive right. So the center's going to work that way. We're going to have a man side to the left. So over the course of a game, like that gets a little bit familiar to the defensive coordinator, to the pass rusher. So on a slide, maybe we say, hey, we'll leave the end. We'll cut that guy with the running back, or we'll leave a tight-ended chip, and then we'll cut with the running back, and then we'll slide everybody to the offensive right. And so you get double teams on the interior players, and then you get help with eyes to that other to the right tackle in this case, who's Wiley. And so that's like not overly common, but just as like something different to throw in, a changeup, right? To kind of just say, hey, I can't just rush if I'm to the man side one-on-one all the time. I'm getting something different, right? Another thing is with the quick game. So one of the things about the quick game is because the ball's out, supposed to be very quickly, I can now attack you as a pass protector. I can jump set you is what they call it. And again, if I can get you before your first steps down as a rusher, as a pass protector, that's going to disrupt you, and it's going to give you something else to think about. It's like, if it's quick, I got to be ready for this. I want to work this. And it just gets you in your head a little bit. So those are two very simple ways that we're not adding play action, we're not adding draws or screens, but those are really, really simple ways to kind of be like, hey, man, here's some opportunities for you as an offensive lineman to throw some different stuff in there. And right, so you mentioned moving the pocket. Another benefit of just moving the pocket, even on like a soft waggle, is you get some of the same benefits of a slide, right? You get guys working the same direction with tight ends kind of holding down one defensive player, and the offensive line gets to work combinations and double teams in pass protection. So that's where it's like, where you got to kind of say there's all these tools. Even those aren't really very invasive tools, in my opinion. It's not like we're changing the offense. It's just we're saying, how do we give them something different, a different angle, a different position to work a different combination, a different communication against these four guys in the Philadelphia pass rush. And I think that's something that I'd like to see today potentially, is just something different. Quick game, slides, man, changing the direction of the man side too is another one that's very, very helpful, right? Because it just prevents you from teeing up on what you're going to do. It's like you mentioned the pitching analogy, right? Like if you know what the pitcher's going to throw, you can kind of time it up. Like when I go to the batting cage, I'm not a baseball player, but I can hit 80-mile-an-hour fastball because they throw 20 80-mile-an-hour fastballs right in a row.
Right, you adjust.
But if every fourth one or every third one is a changeup, like I'm going to miss it every single time. And so essentially that's what you're trying to do from a pass protection standpoint.
So that also gets into some of the other stuff, and we got about 90 seconds left here in the segment. But that is why I think we've talked about running the ball, and I just think philosophically, like sometimes you have to eat a running play. Like some we talk about trying to run it into good looks. Like don't run it into bad looks. It puts you in bad down and distance. But you can't just like the Eagles are not going to give you a ton of great looks to run the football necessarily because they know that's what you want to do, right? Sometimes you just got to do it anyway. Be like, okay, stop it. Yeah. And obviously good stuff can still happen. There's a good chance it's not going to go very far, but it breaks the rhythm of the pass rush. And so whether it's with the play action and letting your offensive line act as if it's run, or whether it's a soft waggle. Who doesn't love a soft waggle?
A soft waggle.
Just a light, easy roll to your right or to your left. There are downsides though. Like okay, well, why don't you do that? Why isn't that your fastball? Well, because it cuts the field down in terms of the available space to attack in a lot of the West Coast offense in terms of a principle is we're going to make you defend 53 yards wide, full of grass, and if you cut that down to 40, 30, 20, depending on how hard you roll your quarterback out, that obviously can be a detriment. So there are a lot of things to consider when you make these adjustments, but they're worth it as that changeup, and that's why they're changeups, not fastballs.
And even with like the slide, which is something that not a lot of people do, but even if you're just doing a slide pro, you're getting your worst pass protector on the best pass rusher. And so I don't want to live in that. I don't want that to be my main thing. I want it to be a changeup. I don't want it to be kind of some variety. So I think to your point, everything has a pro and con, whether it's from a pass protection standpoint or from a route concept standpoint.
All right, when we get back here on the Take Command pregame show, you'll hear from the Sports Junkies on Burgundy and Gold Game Day. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor, where the doors are open and there were folks waiting, already starting to pack it in. Here at Tap Sports Bar, the Commanders rally for the away games is here as well, so we know that there'll be a ton of burgundy and gold as this place starts to fill up in just a little bit. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, and hello on the interwebs, streaming live on YouTube on both stations' YouTube channels. A reminder tonight, Logan and I will be back on YouTube about 90 minutes after the game for the post-game show. Although last road game, they kept you a long time on the team post-game. Yeah.
Did we win? That's probably why.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you that was.
Yeah,
why.
that going to 2-0. Everybody was happy out in Denver. Logan did about an hour and 10 of post game, and then we did our show. Nice, tidy 30 minutes. So as you get home,
those have been nice. The 30-minute ones have been.
That's what I'm saying.
Perfect window.
No shade to the other one you do. I'm sure it's a lovely program, but you want a nice, tidy 30 minutes, holler at your boys. YouTube.com/@1067 The Fan and at the Team 980. Of course, every single day weekday on both stations, you get the Sports Junkies 6 to 10 a.m. and we want to give you a little bit of their take here on the Take Command pregame show. So, without further ado, JP and company, take it away.
All right, boys, the Commanders are 2-1, but it seems like this week the theme has been the sky is falling. They got the Eagles next. It was a bloodbath against Buffalo. What do you expect to happen, Cakes?
I think you're going to see part 2 of what happened against Buffalo. They're facing a superior team. It's a road contest, another road test for Sam Howell. I just think this Eagles offense is clearly superior. And if you look at this Commanders defense, they're allowing nearly 29 points per game, and the run defense is averaging almost 130 yards allowed per game. It's a bad recipe. It's a bad matchup. And I think the Eagles win this one big.
So you don't think there's going to be any adjustments on Washington's side?
I think there could be adjustments, but I don't think it's going to matter. Because
nothing meaningful.
This is an Eagles team that was just in the Super Bowl last year. They're the best team in the division. And I don't even think they're clicking on all cylinders offensively yet. Wait until Hurts gets going with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Dallas Goedert's done nothing this year either. So the run game for them is on point. DeAndre Swift has been a godsend for that offense. If Hurts starts heating up, it could be even worse than the Buffalo matchup.
I think the worst thing for this particular game, the worst thing for Washington was the fact that they did beat Philly last year.
Yeah.
In Philly on Monday night. Because they're talking about it up there. The Philly, the media's talking about it. The players are talking about it. Coaching staff's not going to forget about that loss where they turned the ball over 4 times. Look, it's not like Washington did. Heineke was average at best in that game. Didn't throw a touchdown, threw a pick. Now, they ran the ball well because they had the ball a ton because Philly kept giving them the ball back. So I think that the Eagles are focused for this particular game. It's a division game, and they are remembering that loss from last year.
You know what the best thing for Washington is? Is that they just got smoked and embarrassed by the Bills last week.
If there's no adjustments, we're questioning some things.
If there's no adjustments, I honestly will be stunned. Right. I expect to see a completely different game plan, more max protection, more quick passing, more misdirection, more play action, all those obvious things you need to do to stay out of that sack debacle that they've gotten themselves in these first 3 weeks. I expect a totally different game, a division game that's competitive. Of course, I still think that Philly is better and that they will win, but I expect it to be competitive.
I think the matchups to watch, it's the Eagles' defensive line against the Commanders' offensive line, which has struggled. Obviously, when you give up 9 sacks, some of it may be on Howell, but some of it's on, obviously, the offensive line. And then on the flip side, look, we have Jonathan Allen on the show every Monday, and he takes accountability. The defensive line has to step up this week against an Eagles team that in week 2 against Minnesota ran for 259 yards on the ground. And in week 3 against Tampa ran for 201 yards. And then when I talk about the defensive line, look, they're not allowing teams to run against them. In those 2 games, they have run for 460 yards. And their opponents, the Vikings and Tampa, have run for 69 yards. They are dominating both sides of the line. Offensive line, they're dominant. Defensive line, they're dominant.
And you feel like this is a game where Sam Howell really has to develop the chemistry, which we haven't seen yet, with Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. I think for the Commanders to have any chance at winning this game, both of those guys have to have an increased role in the offense. I think it's a tough ask a week after that Buffalo disaster.
It's kind of
FedEx.
stunning that the target share ranking in the NFL with McLaurin and Dotson completely tied at 62.
Right.
Out of all the receivers, they're at 62. That's got to go
Because the quarterback's taking sacks for whatever reason.
Correct.
And they're jamming the receivers, and they're not getting open in time.
Yeah, they got to increase that.
All right, all of us have the Eagles winning this week. We would hope that there would be a surprise so we can have a victory Monday. But you know what? To me, the sky isn't falling. Even if they lose, you're sitting at 2-2, which you would have taken at the start of the season looking at the schedule.
Yep, then you get the Bears on deck in a short week at FedEx. So
All I'm looking for is keep your dignity intact.
Moral victory.
moral
I'm
victory.
with you. I believe in moral victories. I don't know if it's going to be one. It could be a bloodbath, which Cakes predicts. All right, that's it from us. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, fellas. The Sports Junkies, there, of course, 6 to 10 a.m. weekdays on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. All right, Logan, the chemistry between Howell and the receivers is something we talked about a little bit earlier in the show, but I kind of want to circle back to it, and specifically for Terry, because we talked about Jahan quite a bit earlier. Terry's had monster games against the Eagles in his career. Going back to his rookie year, first game, I've told the story a couple times, I feel like this week on various platforms, but like first game of his career, 2019, it's my last year on the beat. And he was pretty good in training camp. We're like, I think this McLaurin kid's going to be something. And he goes out against the Eagles, and you're like, whoa, this kid's amazing.
Was that the game he had 2 deep touchdowns?
I do believe so. Unfortunately, that was about it for that day. And that was really it for the offense for the entire season, if I remember correctly. That was not a pretty year of Washington football. But when you look at Terry, the matchup against Darius Slay, and your EB trying to get him perhaps a little bit more involved, what are you looking at this week to try to take advantage of that?
Yeah, it's interesting because everyone talks about, or we have talked a lot about the defensive line and how good they are and how dynamic they are. But when you look at the back end, I'm not sure what it is. If it's the new defensive coordinator, there's air back there. And what I mean by that, like when you watched the Buffalo Bills, it was tight, man. They did a really good job of matching concepts. They rolled the stuff. They communicated really well, and the throwing windows were really, really small. And when I watch Philly, for example, I don't see the same thing necessarily. I don't see that super tight coverage. So I do think there's opportunities, and I think Terry has shown an ability to kind of beat the best corners in football. Darius Slay being one of them. I think he's probably a top 10 guy at this point in his career, but physically, he just matches up really well. And I think, I say physically, but I think Terry's physicality is something that Slay has a hard time negotiating. So, something I would like to see potentially today is just a 50-50 ball, just a 50-50 throw down the field, because he's shown a precedent and an ability to get that done at a high level. And I think that's something, especially in this matchup, that I would like to see. But outside of that specific thing, in terms of, 1 or 2 deep opportunities for Terry,
Right.
I think there's just, I don't know. Again, it's this cover 3 concept that Philly's running. A little bit of match, a little bit of man, but they drop guys in coverage. They're not dropped, but they're in voids, huge voids, kind of at that 15-yard window. And so if they can protect, I think you can dice this defense up. It's just about whether you can protect and find these matchups to Terry, to Jahan down the field, because I do think that they, against this kind of banged-up secondary for Philly, I think it's a pretty good matchup for Washington.
Yeah, if you want to take an optimist spin on what Logan just said, okay, well, there's air there. Okay, well, that's really good for a quarterback who seems to need to be able to see it a little bit. Like, Sam Howell has been a guy so far in his NFL career that when he sees a guy open, he can deliver the ball in stride and let his guys make a play. But the anticipation to throw into space when the receiver's not perfectly open at the time he's going to have to release it is a level of trust that he doesn't seem to have yet in this offense. It's not so much like, I don't trust the receivers. It's just like, do you trust what you see? Do you trust that space is where the receiver is ultimately going to be? That's the optimist spin on it. There's also the reality that, if all this is pending on protection, Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox and Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham and are very, very good. So I do think it often comes down to the trenches, and we see that very easily in hindsight, and we spend all this time talking about the skill position guys beforehand.
Yeah.
I think when you face the Eagles, because of how good their lines are,
the
line play becomes becomes so apparently the most important thing in the game.
Yeah, and I think when you look at like this matchup specifically. Everyone talks about the Philly defensive line, and they should be talking about them. They're really, really good. Specifically, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter have been. I mean, Jordan Davis, I thought last year, I was like, I don't want to say he's going to be a bust, but he's going to be an average NFL player. And then this year, he looks like a physically dominant guy. Like all those athletic traits, all that physicality you saw at the combine last year is 100% on display. And he is just he might be with the best nose guard in football up there with Dexter Lawrence. Like that's how good we're talking over 3 games. Now he's still young, whatever.
Sure.
But I will say they do not, at least in the first couple games, have not been like quick win guys outside of Jalen Carter for whatever reason. I'm not sure what it is. Like Jordan Davis is excellent at compressing the pocket. He's got some decent pass rush moves. But think about it, it's like him and Fletcher Cox are pocket compressors, right? And then Brandon Graham is a pocket compressor as well. And obviously that shows up against tackles who have a hard time with him. But there hasn't been a lot of quick wins defensively for them. So in some ways, I think that is good. That's good for the Commanders, that there's not like this. For example, when you watch Buffalo, all those guys, you saw quick wins on tape. Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver. Yeah, different type of athletes, right? And so I'm not saying that that the Commanders' offensive line is going to go out and physically dominate them, but I do think that there is a world where they're able to create nice pockets and create some protection, that Sam can see through. Now, the pocket's going to compress from the interior, which, as we just talked about, for Sam is maybe not the best thing in the whole world. But I do see a world where they're not getting sacked every single play. They can throw the football a little bit. They can kind of do what EB wants to do and exploit some of these matchups down the field. I do see that happening. And when you look at Minnesota, they were able to throw the ball very effectively against Philadelphia. And Kirk got hit a ton, and Kirk's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL at not turning pressures into sacks, which, again, not Sam at this point in his career.
Very much so.
A lot of what-ifs here, but I do think there is a path where you say we can protect this well enough to exploit kind of this. It's not a porous secondary, but they just aren't clicking at a high level in the same way like Buffalo was.
So there was one play where a Commanders receiver got loose against the Bills last week. That is where we're going to start our tale of the tape next. I'd also like to ask Logan a little bit about this Commanders defense as we look back at some of the ways they can generate pressure. Because that was an issue last week, and how do you get after Jalen Hurts and do so responsibly, considering how much of a weapon he is as a runner. So we'll get to that in our tale of the tape. Chris Russell at 11:30. We'll go around the league at 11:45. I continue to break this down. Of course, Commanders and Eagles all the way up till kickoff. Logan Paulsen there. Craig Hoffman here. This is Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor, and we are live on the Take Command pregame show. It's the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. And it is time for our tale of the tape before we head up to Philadelphia. The Rooster's flown to Philadelphia, Logan.
Has he?
So we're going to live check-in in Philly coming up at 11:30. But tail of the tape, we take a look at a couple of key plays from the last game, see if they can tell us anything about this one as we get ready for Commanders and Eagles coming up at 1 p.m. I want to start on the offense before we get to the defense. The one big shot play they get last week is early second half. Curtis Samuel gets loose on the outside. They get a one-on-one matchup against Buffalo's second corner.
He's really the third corner, but yeah.
Yeah, and they're able to get one down the field. And I think they've done a good job so far this year of getting Samuel involved. Like, he's kind of had the right number of touches, in my opinion.
I see.
They do a good job of game planning for him. Like, this is where Curtis is going to get his touch, and we're going to try to make it pretty impactful. Some of them have been successful, some of them not so much. That's the nature of the NFL. But when you talk about an offense that does have super explosive players, and you want to get shots, obviously, with some regularity, how are they able to dial up that one? Why does it work? Why do they get the matchup? Why do they get the coverage? And then how do they replicate that in other situations?
Yeah, so I think the one thing about that play that was really good is they're an empty. And so I know a lot of people are saying, like, don't get an empty, don't get empty. It's the worst thing ever. But it allows Sam to see the coverage really nicely. And I think they're just running like what I would call a stick looky concept. So to the 3 receiver side, which is to the offensive right, they're running a stick, which is like a 5-yard out, a flat, and a go. And then the other side, they're running a looky. So I think it's Jahan is running basically like a slant with an option to break out if you get walled by that hook player. And so in man-to-man coverage, and then the outside guy, who's Curtis Samuel, is getting pressed by the backup corner, number 47. And so Sam's able to look out and be like, this is obviously man coverage. They're trying to, and they're also bringing a pressure. They're bringing an extra rusher. And I just think this is exactly what you want at an empty, right? You get a very clear picture. You get to identify your best matchup and just say, hey, we're going to go for it. And one of the things about this looky concept is that go is usually dead, right? So it's literally just like it's alerted versus the right look. And so Sam doesn't see that if they're not empty. Sam gets back, nice easy drop. Offensive line does a great job picking up the extra blister. It's 5 on 5. Do a good job identifying it when you're one-on-one matchups. And Sam basically lays out like a perfect ball.
Yeah,
like a perfect
heck
ball.
of a throw.
It's like right in the basket. Great catch by Curtis. Great win by Curtis. You see his like horsepower there. His ability to just run by people was awesome. And I think that's how you find your we talk about like when is the right time to take a shot play. And I think that's something that a lot of fans are like, just take a shot, take a shot. You got to kind of get the right look in the NFL. You got to get the right look in the NFL. And that's one of the things that Kyle and Sean and all those guys are really good at, is based on formation, based on personnel, is getting the right look. But I think also in that look, I think it was third down. So in down and distance, they did a great job of saying Buffalo likes to play man on third down. We like this concept as a man beater with some shot options, and you hit a good play. And I think that it's kind of this confluence of factors that lead to those shots. And I think I really like the play. I like the play call. I like the execution. The execution's outstanding. And to your point about how you get more of those, the answer is complicated. It's a complicated answer, but I do think pushing the envelope with regards to what you can do from a personnel standpoint, from a formation standpoint, because there's certain teams that play, for example, they play 13 personnel in cover 3 all the time. So if I know you're going to be in cover 3 because of 13 personnel, what cover 3 beaters can I run? Right, just as a simple example, right? And then I can get a shot play that I like out of there, because the protection should be good and we should be ready to rock and roll. So that's kind of what I'd say is, like, can you grind the tape more? Can you do more to kind of find those opportunities? And I think EB and the staff are doing a lot. But, when you're not winning, you got to push the envelope a little bit harder and see what you can turn up. And so that's something I would say.
I feel like it's a good time to remember that they are 2-1. So this is obviously a bit of a 1-week problem. But when it's as bad as it was last week, and you put up 3 points at the end of a game when, you basically are going to get shut out if you just, milk the clock out. Not great, Bob. Not great.
Not great.
On the defensive side, the big talking point of the week is the pressure created or lack thereof against Josh Allen last week. And I do think Ron Rivera is 100% correct when he talked about, I think our guys got spooked a little bit.
Yeah.
It definitely feels like that's a crew that was like, oh, my God, this guy, what do we – I mean, in the first 2 third downs of the game, like, why wouldn't you get spooked?
Yeah.
He scrambles for first down on the first third down. With a little bit of a crease, he gets out and picks up big yards. And on the second third down of the game, he makes one of the most superhuman plays you'll see in the NFL all year, running back to his right throwing kind of three-quarters sidearm off his back foot, 35 yards in the air, and he couldn't have handed the ball to Stephon Diggs any better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're going to get a little spooked. Now, one of the plays, as you've handed me your handy-dandy iPad here to watch this play
it's
on.
It's a big iPad.
It is a big iPad. What I'm looking at is a coffee house blitz where they actually do the thing that a lot of fans want. Like, how do you generate more pressure? Send more blitzers.
Yeah.
Why did this one work, and is it the kind of thing that can work against Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I absolutely think this could work against Jalen Hurts. And so one of the things I love about it is that it's a zone pressure, and that they can't slide your finger on this one because it's, I don't know why, but that's how it works.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But the
Logan's teaching me how to use the iPad.
How to use the iPad.
But I'm a big kid now.
Big kid now. But I would say that one of the things about that look and about that pressure is that it's a zone pressure, right? So you're dropping out Chase Young. You're basically making them dictate a slide a certain way. Cam Curl pretends like he's dropping out, getting into coverage, and then adds in late, right? So basically it's just a kind of a cool way to get to a simulated pressure, adding a rusher. I think Forrest also blitzes on this play.
Butler, but yeah.
Butler, yeah. No, Butler's the guy who almost gets the pick, right? So I think
maybe it is Forrest.
Yeah, Forrest is blitzing. And I think, again, it's just this is one of those things where the blitz is extremely well designed. The coverage off of it is very well designed. And you could do more of this, I think, the question is how much more. And I go back to my old thing that we talked about on Tuesday or whatever day that was when we did the podcast. Is it was 16-0 going into the third quarter after 3 offensive turnovers. Do you need to do more of that, or are you okay playing these softer coverage structures? And so I think they obviously have it in the bag. Like they ran a similar blitz down in the red zone where Cam misses the sack, right?
Yep.
Josh runs for a touchdown. It looks a little bit different, but essentially like the bones of it is the same. And so one of the things I like about this is that he called it in a specific situation. It was 3rd and 8. Percy Butler on the backside is the backside kind of, I don't know what he would be. I guess he's going to be like a lurk player because he's coming from a post down and kind of matching the 3-by-1, which is to the offensive left, defensive right. And he plays number 3 beautifully and almost gets an interception because of the pressure, because of the zone coverage, because of the concept. And I think if you're running that all the time, you're not getting that opportunity for the explosive play. I think it's just like, much like on offense, so you need to call your shot plays in the right moment. I think Jack in this game did a really good job of calling his shot plays, but we just didn't get the pick off of it. Like that's a turn that, as PFF defines it, that would be a turnover-worthy play. Like that should be an interception. It goes right through Percy's hands. Excellent call by Jack. Excellent pressure. Excellent to flush him out of the pocket and while still containing him in the pocket. Great job. And I guess my question to you and to the fans is how much of this do you need when the defense, even though not creating a ton of pressure, is still, from a point standpoint, relatively effective?
I think that you don't need a ton of it. And I think what you need is your defensive line that you put more capital into than anything else on the team to play like it. And the defensive line played fine against Buffalo, but like fine isn't how this defense is built. This defense is built for the line to play great. And that means finishing plays. I think the other thing that we'll talk about more coming up at the top of the hour, too, is the relationship between Chase Young and John Allen, and how perhaps a little bit less from Chase could lead to a lot more from both of them.
Maybe.
So we'll get to that coming up at the top of the hour. Next, though, we head up to Philadelphia. Chris Russell joins the show, sets the scene for us from Lincoln Financial Field, and we'll get his take on the game. Do I lob him the softball and let him just say run the ball more?
Oh my gosh, I think you have to start the interview with that. Like Chris, if you were the OC, like what would you do?
Yeah, and then he'll answer, and then we'll say thanks, Chris, and then we'll go to the next break because he'll have talked for 12 minutes. Chris Russell joins us next. Team 980 1067 The Fan is Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. And, of course, we are not only live pregame, but we are going to be live postgame on YouTube, where we're also streaming live right now at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan for our Take Command postgame show, the Instant Reaction podcast that will be in your audio feeds tomorrow morning. But if you want to watch it live on video, you can on YouTube after the game. Of course, we're live now at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Doors are open, starting to fill up a little bit, so come hang out. It's about to surge, Logan. About noon is when it starts to really fill up. So if you want to get your choice and table and you're driving around the Beltway, scoot on over and hang out with us here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. However, now to Philadelphia we go, and Chris Russell joins us from Lincoln Financial Field. Rooster, cock-a-doodle-doo to you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, fellas. I hate to break it to you. I'm not quite at Lincoln Financial Field yet. Here's the problem. There was a horrible bus accident on 95. Yeah, I mean, the entire charter bus was on fire, and it snarled. I'm just hoping everybody's okay, but it did not look good, and it absolutely destroyed traffic. So we are running behind. We'll get there.
Okay.
But we're running behind. And, Logan, remember when you used to play for the Redskins and we used to fly to Philadelphia from Dulles?
I do.
And we'd be in the air for 28 minutes?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, this is not awesome. this is just the opposite of awesome.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever do the train bit? Because I know Philly would occasionally would do that coming down.
Yeah. I know before I got here, Cooley used to talk about the train and how we really enjoyed it. I couldn't tell if he was being sardonic or what. But
yeah, train to Philly is ideal.
Ideal.
Yeah.
The reason why they fly out of Dulles is because, as we all know, from Ashburn it could take an hour and 15, hour and a half, whatever, to get the entire team by charter bus over to Union Station.
Right.
It could take almost as long to get over there as it could to get up to Philadelphia on an Excella Express, so that's why they don't do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But from Philly, because it doesn't take as long to get to the train station, you just do it coming down and you get to your hotel.
Right here, I will say that I do remember getting home faster from games in Philadelphia than from FedEx. It was like, this would be awesome. We'll be back at the house.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
All right, that's traffic. Now time for sports. Chris Russell with us, which means it's time to talk about running the football.
Yes.
I think we all agree that there is some room for more running the football, for sure, with the success that Brian Robinson had last week, with some of the struggles with Sam, in terms of protection, with turnovers, all of that kind of stuff. But, Chris, if you're running the team, if it's your formula, what does it look like this week, kind of your run-pass splits, and take all the contingencies of, they're down 14 in the fourth quarter. When the game is competitive, when you're in the flow of where you want to be offensively, what does it look like for you?
Yeah, if it's still a reasonably close game, I don't think a 60-40-ish split, 60 pass, 40 run is a bad thing. I know Eric Bieniemy so far through 3 games is 65-35 on 1st and 10. He hasn't run the ball at all on 2nd and 10, which some people like, some people don't like, whatever. I understand how you want to be a pass. You guys were talking about this. You want to be a pass-first team in 2023. Look, I'm a Neanderthal. Some people would call me a knucklehead. I'm not stupid. I understand that throwing the football gives you a better chance of chunk yardage, especially when you don't have, big-time burning speed in your backfield. I understand all of that. That being said, I think there is opportunities, and I don't know if I missed it because I stepped out of the car for a sec, but I think I heard Logan talk about, some extra tight ends, and that to me is going to be one of the keys today. More maybe 12 and 13 personnel, especially with Logan Thomas back, not only to help in the passing game and pass protection, but also in the running game, where you can get a little bit more on the edge, where Philadelphia is a little bit more susceptible than they are up the middle. I mean, I think Jordan Davis, who did not play in that Monday night game last November when Washington came out, ran by design, and ran with some smoke and mirrors and some eye candy, I think that's going to be a no-go. That's helmet on helmet. You're going to get blown up probably. I think if they're going to have some success, it's going to be wide and to the perimeter against this team.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good insight. So in terms of, obviously that's running the football, from a pass protection standpoint, like what are you expecting from today, and like how do you think this group bounces back from last week?
Well, I was fascinated by what you guys were talking about with the creation of the pocket because of Sam's height, which we know is an issue. But you know, the soft sets and all that stuff. Look, I'm not smart enough to figure all that out. I hope they are. I hope maybe they can figure something out in that regard. So I'll leave it at what you guys said. But for me, what I want to see more of is less deep drops, which I understand may be part of the reason connected to the height. A bunch of those sacks, 2 or 3 at least, came off of like 7-step, maybe even more, deeper drops last week. And it's not really giving you that protection, that cushion that I think they're hoping for. Maybe it's giving Sam a little bit more vision. I don't know, but it's not working. So to me, what I'd like to see more, and I hope this makes sense because you guys watch more film than I do, is more, okay, you want to be in shotgun, fine. You don't want to be under center, fine. Instead of dropping 5 steps out of shotgun, how about like a quick pivot of your hips from the gun position, or maybe a quick step or 2 back so that you're 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage instead of 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and getting the ball out on a tunnel screen, on a slant, on a smoke, on a natural running back screen, not just a check down. I want to see the quick passing game, but I want to see it out of quick drops, and I want to see it out of quick footwork so that we're not sitting there saying, hey, Sam, go through multiple reads, hold on to the ball, start running for your life, and make a pass or play like the interception to Epinesa last week where you're running for your life. You're not clearly reading defenses well enough in that regard. You're under duress, and then you make a bad decision and a bad throw.
I mean, Logan, I would defer to you here. Like, how much of that is, like, should be a part of this offense by design? How much of it is already being called, and then Sam is not necessarily executing it at a high level? Like, is that what's happening, or is it just not being called?
Well, I think last week they did run a little bit more quick game, you know, and we're talking a slight increase, maybe like 7 to 12%, which is significant. But I do think, to the Roosters' point, I think you got to find more stuff like that. Like, if you're not going to run the football, which I think we've all said we're okay with, you got to think of different ways.
Just for the record, Chris is definitely not saying that.
Okay, yeah.
You and I are okay with, but like the man's got a reputation, Logan. What are you doing to him?
But what I'm saying,
you guys are killing me. I said you could be a pass first team, 60-40.
I know, but yeah.
75-25.
Rooster, what I'm doing to you is poking the easiest button that has ever existed in the history of sports talk radio.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, you got to find more stuff that simulates the run game. So
right.
Is it quick game? Yeah. Is it bubble screens? Is it slammer screens? Is it that type of stuff? And you know, whatever that looks like, that even the jet sweep stuff that they ran in you know, like the little shovel pass forward, like those are passes technically, but it allows you to kind of attack the perimeter and just decrease the down-to-down difficulty for your quarterback, like you were talking about at the top of the show. So I think that, to that point, I agree with what Chris is saying in terms of framing. It's just about what EB feels comfortable calling with this group of offensive linemen and with this group of skill position players. Personally, because of how they align, I think the jet sweep stuff would be great. Just to get like a 5, like doesn't need to be touchdowns, but if we're in kind of that like 3 to 6 yard range on those plays, they're low risk, they're relatively high reward. Why not?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Chris Russell's with us from just outside of Philadelphia, because in true Chris Russell fashion, the second easiest button in the history of sports talk radio is the rooster in traffic. Not his fault. I hope everyone on that bus is okay. But so, Chris, I want to flip the field for you real quick before we let you go. There's been obviously a lot of talk as well about the defensive line this week, and can they get more pressure? What did you see from them versus Josh Allen, and how do you think they can fix it as they match up against Jalen Hurts?
Well, we didn't see enough. Let's put it that way. 3rd and long killed them. The mobility of Allen killed them. Sometimes it was to his right and rolling out and extending plays. Sometimes it was, you know, the run up the middle where Chase got pushed and knocked out of the way. I don't know whose exactly fault is that. I'm sure you guys have broken that down. But the bottom line is you're going to have, you know, discipline, better lane discipline. And I don't know. I mean, Jalen Hurts has got 30 runs this year, but it's only for like 100 yards because a bunch of those runs have been on the tush. What do they call it? The tush push.
The tush push, the brotherly shove. We you know, there's all kinds of good stuff for that.
So I don't don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, guys. You tell me. I don't think they're running as much with Jalen Hurts as they did last year. Maybe the numbers would disprove that, but it doesn't feel like if you eliminate those tush-push runs, it doesn't feel like he's running off of RPO as much by design. So I think if that's true, and if my eyes are telling me that, easier to keep him in the pocket maybe by if you hold your gap discipline, your lane discipline, and you pin him in there. And I think you guys talked about this earlier in the show. Making him beat you throwing the football, I think, is a better recipe for success. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but I think it's a better recipe for success. He didn't throw well against them in the Monday night game. And even in the Week 3 game last year, he had one great quarter in which Devontae Smith absolutely ate Kendall Fuller for lunch. He didn't do anything else the rest of the day. Benjamin St-Juste was awesome in that game, especially on third down in Week 3 at FedEx Field last year. So I think this pass rush, if they can maintain their discipline, and that's a big if they can maintain gap control, can try and keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, and then you hope for a bad throw or bad turnover. He had almost 3 interceptions. He had 2. He should have had at least 3 on Monday night. So that's what I think you hope for while not getting killed, hopefully, by DeAndre Swift.
All right, that's Chris Russell with us here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan on the Take Command pregame show. Of course, catch the Rooster before me weekdays on the Team 980, 1 to 4. He has Dot coming to visit. He's got Linnell coming to visit. It's the Rooster and Friends, 1 to 4 Eastern on the Team 980. Chris, safe travels the rest of your way. Best of luck battling traffic, and I'll see you this week.
Thank you, boys.
All right, Chris. Thanks, buddy.
All right, Chris Russell, everybody. When we get back, we will go quickly around the rest of the NFL, get you caught up on the London game, and then preview the rest of the day's game before returning to this one and some more thoughts on the Commanders' defense at noon. It's the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. The burgundy and gold jerseys are starting to show up in numbers here. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you. Don't miss the Take Command postgame show as well, streaming live on YouTube, where we are streaming live right now at the Team 980 at 106.7 The Fan. That is a digital-only exclusive. And then, of course, the Take Command podcast during the week. Logan and I just discussing the schedule. Let's just say this. Subscribe to the podcast. You're going to get a lot of them in a very short time this week, reviewing this game and then previewing the Bears with the short week on Thursday night. Also, Logan, last bit of housekeeping before we get we all have like 5 minutes to go through the entire slate of games.
Uh-oh.
But worth mentioning, we'll be back here on Thursday for the Take Command pregame show.
Yep.
And I'll be doing the Hoffman show live from here as well. I'll start at 4 o'clock. Logan will get here at 6:30. So we'll be here pregame for the Bears on Thursday. All right, with that, Chris back in studio. Let's hit our fun NFL music. And Logan, we're not going to have time for much analysis, but we'll see what we can do here as we run through the entirety of the NFL schedule. Right now in London, the Jags in their second home, beating up on the Falcons 20-7. It has been a pretty miserable day for Desmond Ridder, despite getting some good support from Bijan Robinson. 13 for 92 for Robinson, but Trevor Lawrence kind of back on track. Christian Kirk's having a nice little day. 20-7, 10:32 to go in the fourth quarter. Perhaps game of the day. Dolphins and Bills. We just saw what Buffalo could do last week. Let's spend a little bit of time on this one. 3-0 Dolphins in Buffalo. What you think, man?
I'm really excited to see the what the Buffalo defense does to the Miami Dolphins. I think if anybody can kind of match up with them and has played together long enough and has good enough skill position players to kind of slow that group down and have a good plan for the motion and the speed of that offense, I think it's probably the Buffalo Bills. And I think, when you have linebackers like Milano and the other guy, number
Bernard,
4, they're fast. They can fit those runs. They're smart. It's just a smart athletic defense. And so I think it's going to slow that group down a little bit. And then it's like, can you manage Josh Allen if you're the Bills? Can you manage him freaking out? Because I think even in our game, there was a couple times where he freaked out. He tried to throw a pick to Percy Butler, tried to throw a pick to Cam Curl. And if we catch either one of those, the dynamic of that game is completely different. So
totally.
Can you manage him? And that's kind of my thought. I think if any defense that we've seen so far that I've evaluated can slow that group down, it's definitely this Bills group.
Bills are favored by 2.5, but
is it away?
No, it's in Buffalo. But I do think Poyer's out, which obviously hurts, and Jordan Phillips is out as well.
Oh,
so,
is he?
It's going to be a tall task. When we did our picks on Friday, I picked Miami. But we'll see. Tua's already over 1,000 yards on the year.
I think I'd go Buffalo on that game.
All right. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Broncos and Bears. Yikes, man.
How much you want to talk about this one?
Not very much at all, frankly. Really, the only reason it's worth mentioning is because the Bears are coming here on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably take Denver in this game. I just think I just want to see if there's any progression from Fields. That's the only reason to watch that game. Is Fields progressing at all?
Right. And we'll get a taste of that on Thursday. Ravens and Browns. Talk about injuries. Deshaun Watson is out for Cleveland, and 78 guys are out on a 53-man roster from Baltimore. I don't know how that math works, but I think it checks out.
That's a bummer, man, because this is a game that you circulate. Man, this is going to be so much fun to watch. But obviously, you want the best players to be playing, and I'm excited to see Dorian Thompson-Robinson play. Obviously, he's a Bruin. Really excited for him and what he did in the preseason. But it's just going to lose a little bit of his luster because every week I feel like Cleveland's getting better. And are they the dark horse kind of playoff Super Bowl team this year? And I think with Deshaun, maybe, if he continues to play better. But again,
their defense is so nasty, man. Off to a truly historic start. But we'll see if Lamar, basically by himself with all the injuries, O-line, receivers, running backs,
everybody.
If they can
and how does that O-line handle that front with everybody banged up? So
not well.
Yeah.
Bengals and Titans. Joe Burrow and company finally on the board. Burrow was able to play last week, which is obviously great. We have the is Tannehill cooked question for Tennessee, man. It's been rough sledding, and Derrick Henry's had a miserable year. Their line stinks the high heavens.
I think this is going to be this kind of feels like a get-right game for Tennessee a little bit. Like they're at home, Mike Vrabel. They don't do well after they do traditionally do well after a loss. The Bengals aren't back, so I think maybe this is a Tennessee game.
Rams and Colts. Anthony Richardson back for Indianapolis.
Oh, I'm so excited I just want to see more of him. You know, and then I want to see more Puka Nacua. Like that's why I'd watch that game.
Yeah, 100%. Anthony did a good job in our league of picking up Puka Nacua in fantasy. Nice pickup, kid.
Did he pick it up like week 1?
Yeah, like after he went nuts, he was first on the waiver wire. Was like, give me that guy. It's been a good job from him. Bucks and Saints. New Orleans favored by 4. this will be, I think, actually really interesting because I'm a
home?
little
Who's home?
New Orleans is home, and Derek Carr is out, so Jameis is playing.
I'm in. Anytime Jameis Winston's playing football, I am 100% in.
You never know what's going to happen, and that's what makes it fun. How about this for a matchup of an 0-3 teams? Vikings and Panthers.
I think the Vikings are a good football team, so I think they roll this game. I think offensively they're good. Like you watch them, you watch what they're doing.
They just got to stop turning the football.
Oh my gosh, exactly. So I think they should kill the Panthers.
Bryce is back?
Okay,
Bryce Young is playing.
Again, kind of in that vein of rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see Bryce play. He's been a little disappointing.
Vikings defense isn't very good, so it's actually a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
In that 1 o'clock window, if you got multiple screens without obviously Commanders and Eagles going to be on your main one. Steelers and Texans. Pittsburgh 3-point favorites on the road. Texans offense low-key kind of good.
Yeah, how about Stroud?
Great, but and the opposite end, Steelers offense looks terrible, but their defense is gross.
But they do have explosive offensive playmakers, and every game they kind of find, whether it's Austin or Pickens for an explosive play. So you got to kind of negotiate that. But I think the storyline there is Stroud for me, and does he continue to look like the real deal?
Raiders and Chargers, not really much to talk about there.
Well, just the Chargers. What do the Chargers do without Mike Williams, who takes in that role? I think it's interesting. Herbert's always
keep
fun.
throwing it to Keenan Allen. He had 20 targets last week.
And Herbert's fun to watch, so let's see what Herbert looks like.
Patriots, Cowboys could be interesting. Cardinals, 49ers, probably not. Chiefs, Jets, probably not. That's your Sunday nighter.
That's disappointing.
And then Seahawks and Giants is the Monday nighter. Of course, most of our attention is on Philadelphia, where the Eagles are hosting the Commanders. We are live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, and you can come hang out with us up until kickoff. I mean, you can keep hanging out after kickoff. We're going to go. We're going to talk about the Commanders' defense next. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day, live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here. We'll get back to the Commanders and Eagles in just a second, but my guy Haney just texted me, Logan. I don't know if we have any Hoops fans in the house here at Tap Sports Bar, but we have a Woj bomb, breaking news on the basketball front that I'll just pass along to the audience real quick. And that is that the Blazers, who acquired Drew Holiday in the Dame Lillard trade this week, are trading him to the Celtics. So a bunch of people just went, whoa.
Why?
Talk about a loaded Eastern Conference, because Drew Holiday is a very good basketball player.
Nice.
Despite being very tall. Logan, not a very big NBA fan.
I like the NBA. I don't follow it the same way.
The transaction market,
Yes.
not as much. But, yeah, so Drew Holiday getting traded to the Celtics. We will have more on that, obviously, all week long on the Hoffman Show, where we do a ton of NBA. And I will actually be broadcasting live tomorrow, YouTube digital exclusive. First time we've ever done this, Logan, outside of our postgame show.
Yeah.
Wizards Media Day tomorrow.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'll be sitting down with Wes Unseld and Corey Kispert and Kyle Kuzma, amongst others. So that'll be on YouTube tomorrow, noon to 2 on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980's YouTube pages. Right now, though, we head back to Philadelphia, at least mentally Philadelphia, where the Eagles and Commanders are getting ready to kick off about an hour from now. And, you know, we've talked about the pass rush a little bit and what they can do to be better for the Commanders. But really the key to the game today, said by Logan Paulsen, is that they need to stop the run, does Washington.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift has had a phenomenal couple of games. What kind of challenges does the Eagles' run game uniquely present, and how does Washington match up to stop them?
I mean, they just this is going to be not great analysis. They just have the best offensive line in football. And, run game is directly correlated to how good your offensive line is. They have Lane Johnson, best tackle in football. Their right guard is a second-round draft pick. They brought in to play center, but he is very, very quick. He gets excellent hat placement on his reaches. He can pull. He can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Obviously, Kelsey's awesome. Dickerson, is he hurt still? Is he on the injury list?
I do think he is good to go.
Okay.
I will double-check that real quick.
But he's one of the best guards in football, a very big physical man. And Jordan Mailata did not give up a pressure versus the Minnesota Vikings. So he is playing really, really well. And then you add the tight ends into that mix. And when you watch the Tampa Bay game, when you watch the Minnesota game, they're just able to create so much space, sustain those blocks for such a long time. Like, that question where it's like, how much could an average person get running the football in the NFL? I think you could average maybe 2.5 yards a carry if you're running behind the Philadelphia Eagles, because no one is touching you until you're well into the teeth of the defense. So that is going to be the big challenge, is can you win your one-on-one matchups up front? And then the other thing which I find really interesting is that Philly does something which I guess is a little bit unique to them, at least this year anyway. They seem to have like a game plan run for each team they've played. So versus New England, which was week 1, they ran a ton of counter. So they're pulling the guard, they're following with the tight end. Week 2 against Minnesota, they run a ton of zone read, more tight zone type stuff, like attacking interior. Then you get to Tampa Bay, and it's all outside zone stuff. And I think, maybe you say outside zone stuff because they got Vita Vea. They've got a very good interior in Tampa Bay. And so what is the solution here for what Washington's going to present would be my – what is their game plan run for this week? And just really curious to see, because if Washington has a good beat on it, I think they can just stuff it up pretty well. But, if I'm watching film, I'm saying let's run a lot of toss crack and see if they've corrected it, because our O-line can pull, they can do a lot of stuff, and we can create matchups that we like.
Yeah, I think that if you're thinking about running on Washington, you have to figure out how to do it outside of the defensive line, because inside, disaster. Like, you don't want to run on Allen and Payne. That's not going to go great. Even like Amir Abdullah has done a fantastic job coming in. Ridgeway, like that's where he's played better, than as a pass rusher. And then obviously you got two of the best. Montez Sweat is like maybe top 5 in the league as a run-stopping edge setter. But Chase is very good in that department. James Smith-Williams does a good job setting the edge. Casey Tuhill does a good job and can run. So they've got all these guys, but how do you get outside them? Cross crack is a great one. And then you make Cody Barton run. And I think that, like, making Jamin Davis run, cool.
Good.
Like,
that's good for us.
You got that covered for Jamin, but Cody's got to play. Like, to me, this is the highest leverage game for Cody Barton, and that's a little bit scary based off how he's played so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think, obviously, usually I'd say I agree with you. You got to run outside versus this team, but Philly, man, like they've done a great job against Tampa Bay, who's got some really good interior players. They did a great job against New England. Not quite as effective, but New England's got some kind of gritty, tough guys, and I think it just speaks to how good their offensive line is just that good.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be I'm talking about heavyweight fights, like that's something that I'm really excited to watch. It's just two of the best position groups in football just being like trying to lay claim to who's the best, right? And I think to your point, you bring up a great point. Like Jamin has been playing really well against the run. You watch the Bills game, I think he missed 2 tackles, but is fitting, runs fast, is playing downhill. He had a play which we were going to talk about in tail of the tape, which we didn't get to. It was a toss crack. The center's trying to reach him. He basically stiff arms the center. The receiver comes to crack him. He rips through the receiver's inside shoulder and then runs down the dude on the sideline. Like, it was a tremendous play. And so to see that coming from him more is great. But like to your point, Cody Barton has not been the most accurate guy in terms of fitting runs consistently. Like, I think he's playing better, like we talked about on the podcast. But every week I'm like, is that where he's supposed to fit that? That doesn't seem right. And I think like we've said before, playing linebacker in this system is very challenging, and there's a lot of gray area. But I think he's a guy that you got to have circled on your sheet this week and be like, what is he doing? Because he's going to have to play well.
So there's something that might seem counterintuitive that I think is an interesting option because of the versatility of the roster on this particular team, and that is trying to stop the run with more DBs on the field.
I think that's not a bad idea.
Because you've got guys like Percy Butler who are very good coming down and run support, Derek Forrest, Cam Curl. Quan Martin could be a game where he gets a little bit more involved defensively where he hasn't been so far this year. What do you think of that as an option to, go basically dime personnel? And that also begs the question of Barton, though. If you're going to go one linebacker and you're doing it in part to stop the run, he's not the guy I want out there. Yeah. So, how do you think that they're able to mix and match their options to get speed on the field, get guys who know how to fit runs in this system while not sacrificing things in other areas?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And so what I'd say is one of the benefits of going dime is that it makes it confusing in terms of targets, because all of a sudden, traditionally you get out there, there's 40 linemen, they wear their 90s numbers, there's 3 linebackers, they wear their 50 numbers, and the DBs are back there. I remember one year we played Green Bay, and they were pretty good at stopping the run, but they were in dime all the time, and it kind of was confounding. But I remember being out there being like, all right, that's the corner, that's the safety, that's the linebacker, that's who our combination's going to. Then those guys would switch positions, and you're like, because it's interchangeable chess pieces. So I do think it can be helpful in terms of disrupting targets and the direction the offensive line is going. Obviously you're dealing with like some physical mismatches at that point, but that you're hoping to kind of counteract with some confusion. But I think like a guy like Cam, he plays the run excellent. He does a really nice job with that. So, and I know they're trying to get him out of the box as much as possible to kind of for longevity reasons. But in this game, when you got to have a win, when you got to stop the run, I like his athleticism against Jalen Hurts. I like his ability to fit runs in terms of knowing where to fit. Unlike Cody, again, I don't know the run fits, but it seems to be a little up and down. So that seems like the solution to me is get Jamin, get Cam in the box, maybe even Quan, in the box, and let them move around and be fast and win with athleticism while getting covered up by guys in the Cinco front with Big John Ridgeway matching up with Travis Kelce, which, again, might not be what you want to do because of Kelce's experience.
With Jason Kelce.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
If Travis Kelce shows up in green today, that's bad news.
That's a wacky bet.
That'd be real weird and real bad for Washington. One guy that I think is, I didn't think I'd bring him up today, but now that we're talking about different combinations, different possibilities, I got this question at some point during the week, whether it was on Twitter, whether it was on a YouTube comment, but I think it's worth asking real quick in 30 seconds, 60 seconds of an answer. But we heard so much about Khaleke Hudson this offseason. Khaleke was a guy that played really well in the Dallas game last year, to the point that I think people started to make too much of it. You're like, it was one game, relax.
Yeah.
But then he was awesome all spring, awesome in camp, and hasn't seen the field. I don't even know if he has a defensive snap so far this year. What about, what kind of role does a guy like that have on this team right now defensively? And could he be a part of a solution against a run-first type of team, a team that's really dedicated to it?
Well, later in the game, he was playing against the Bills, right? And he was kind of in I guess it's like their base as the third linebacker. And so I think potentially that's a solution. I don't know. It's hard to kind of give those evaluations because practice is closed now, so you don't know how guys are playing. You don't know what roles they're kind of filling at the moment. But that'd be interesting. The one that I always think, too, is they just seem to be so effective when they gap those guys out in the Cinco front and say, hey, man, John and Payne, win one-on-one, and they seem to do a good job of that. So that seems like the most likely solution. And then the auxiliary personnel, I think, is just something to keep an eye on, and I think we'll know right away what they're going to do and what their plan is. But I think in terms of best personnel, I just think about best personnel for stopping the run. I want John Ridgeway playing nose. I want Allen in a 3. I want Payne in a 3. I think Montez and Chase are going to set beautiful edges. I want Jamin just hunting in there, and I want Cam in the box to match up with Jalen Hurts if they're going to keep the football. And I don't think there's a better combination of just talented, athletic guys that you can get on the field. Now, Cody's got the green dot. Does that mean that Jamin can't be on the field in Cinco? That's going to be super annoying if that's the case.
It seems like that's a sticker. You can move that sticker. I know it's more than that. It's a responsibility, but Jamin's called the defense before. Cam's called the defense before. Don't let that green sticker stop you, is what I would say. Being able to get a defensive play call that's pretty easy to. It's not like calling offense. It's not. There's not complete
the
sentences.
Quarterback,
It's like, hey, green dog left.
But also to support Cody a little bit. It's he is saying oh, we got a shift. We're moving guys around.
Sure.
We're checking defense. There is an intellectual component to it that you might be losing out on if a guy like Jamin takes it over, or Cam even. I don't know. Cam seems like he could probably handle it. But that's something to consider. But, to your point, it's not. I think you could move that around.
I think what you lose is less than what you gain.
Yeah.
And that math checks out to be worth the gains. Danny Rouhier is going to join us coming up at 12:30. Real quick, before we go to break, let's get our Centers for Advanced Orthopedics injury report. Chris Rodriguez out with an illness. Everyone else on the inactive list, healthy scratches. KJ Henry, Trent Scott, Chris Paul, Curtis Hodges, and Mitchell Tinsley are your inactives. Derek Gore has been called up from the practice squad, so he could get some touches today to replace Chris Rodriguez with that roster spot. So that is your Center for Advanced Orthopedics injury report. More physicians, more locations, more advanced care center around one thing. You visit CFAortho.com. Danny coming up in 15 minutes. More keys to the game next. The Take Command pregame show on Burgundy and Gold Game Day on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980. Streaming on the Odyssey app and on YouTube as well, live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. rolling towards kickoff on the Take Command pregame show on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980's Burgundy and Gold Game Day, where we're also streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan with Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. And Logan, we got Danny Rouhier coming up in just a little bit. Certainly hoping that the Commanders play better than his son's soccer team. The young Rouhiers are down 9-0 at the half.
It's tough.
So
soccer's about, like, I feel like a goal is like a touchdown.
Yeah. So that's like almost as bad as what happened to the Broncos last week at the
Yes.
hands of the Dolphins.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this one's the first half.
It's
though.
only at halftime.
Yeah.
So, we'll see if we can lighten Danny's spirits when he joins us at 12:30. Right now, though, we've spent a lot of time talking about the trenches, as we should, because this is a matchup where you've got some of the absolute best in the game. Commanders' defensive line, Eagles, both lines are fantastic. But the secondary matchup is interesting. We've seen A.J. Brown really perform well at times against the
Had a good
Commanders.
game last week, too.
Devontae Smith has had some games. Terry McLaurin has had some games on the Washington side of it. But if we stick with the Eagles receivers for now, how do you think they match up against the Washington secondary? And by the way, there's another thin man to add to the equation. Emmanuel Forbes versus Devontae Smith is kind of a fun one as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love the way you frame that. Like, I think the game is going to be handled in the trenches, and people say that often, but I think this week that's especially true. But I think in terms of the back end of this defense, speaking about the Commanders, I really like what Benjamin St-Juste has been doing, and I think if you're going to match him up with A.J. Brown, I think that matchup is one that, of course, A.J. Brown, who's one of the best players in football, is going to, he's going to get his. But I also think St-Juste matches up physically well with him. He's a bigger guy, longer arms, very good short area quickness, and I think that's great. And I think Benjamin St-Juste is playing more confident, he's playing more physical. So I just want to see how real that development is, and if he can kind of take him out of the game. Like, I just think about last year against Minnesota where he matches up with Justin Jefferson, and Justin Jefferson has a good game, but it's like, St-Juste is in his pocket for the majority of that game, which is awesome. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him, St-Juste specifically, in that matchup against A.J. Brown. And then I think the other one is Devontae Smith. Like, how do you handle him? I think Fuller, even in the game where he got burned, the first game, what was that, week 3 last year?
Yeah.
He's
there. He just had plays made on his head.
Yes, and I think Fuller's done a really good job this year of playing within the defense and playing with good vision of the quarterback. He's gotten better at it.
Yeah, PFF's got him as one of the best corners in football through 3 weeks.
And so, again, physically I don't like the matchup, but I like Kendall's mind in that matchup. I like him understanding concepts and anticipating stuff. And as much as people want to see Forbes, like I want to see Forbes out there from a physical tool standpoint, I think those two starting guys are going to play really good football for us. And I like that. I like the notion that if you can disrupt those outside guys, I think our defensive line can do some work, especially if they're a little bit more aggressive, especially if Jack says, hey, we're going to bring a little bit more pressure, just a little bit. We're talking, 7%, 12% more pressure. I really like what the potential for this group, considering what the back end can do.
So here's where I'm nervous.
Okay, tell me.
Stephon Diggs just found himself open a lot last week. I know it's a lot off schedule.
Yeah. Okay.
But he still was able to do it.
Yeah.
And, now you got two dudes that are super, super dangerous.
Yeah.
By the way, their third guy, Zacchaeus, is a speedster.
Yeah, good player.
He's good. Quez Watkins is out, which is helpful. Another speed guy that they've got. But, they've got so much weaponry that they can. If you want to play one-on-one with them, you're going to lose some.
Yeah.
And you can play good coverage and lose. And I just feel like for this matchup in particular, I have seen it. I've seen them lose so much in the last couple of years with some of these guys, the games that Smith has had, the games that Brown has had, that it's you saying I trust them to be competitive doesn't make me actually feel that good.
Well, I think competitive. I think they're gonna make plays. It's just about managing the plays that they do make. I think is what I'm saying, and I think St-Juste is better. I think Kendall's playing better this year, and if you can just kind of, I don't want to say contain them, but if let's say A.J. Brown goes 6 for 70 and no touchdowns, I think you feel pretty good about that day. And I think the more you get them to throw the football, the better it is. Because I think Jalen Hurts, there's times where you're watching him on film. And again, I'm not saying he's not good, but he's not as comfortable as he was last year in the pocket. It's a new offense. You can tell there's been a little bit of a regression. He might figure it out. It might be this week that he figures it out for all I know, right? But I do think I want him throwing the ball, and I think he's just not quite as accurate as he was last year. He's not quite as confident. The ball's a little bit late. And I think if this back end can get their hands on some footballs, like we were talking about turnovers, right? I just think the way he's playing, more the quarterback is playing, lends itself to those matchups being more beneficial for this team.
That makes sense. And I do think you definitely want them running the football or passing the football.
Yeah.
Like if DeAndre Swift is getting handoffs and Boston Scott and, they got Gainwell, like they got so many dudes that are good and their offensive line just gets to wear on you. Like that's not a good day at the office for Washington. But can you force Jalen Hurts to put the ball out there into some muddy looks? Like, he will throw you the ball some. And I think that is the other thing with him is, he's going to give his guys chances, but sometimes it's going to be contested chances. Can you make plays? Can you go up and, whether it's tipping balls and get picks that way or just get one clean? Like, you need to steal a couple possessions, I think, on that. Outside on the other side of the field, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, but how do you like the matchups for any particular one of the Commanders' 3-star receivers? We talked about Terry. He's had some good days on Darius Slay in the past. Bradbury's a little banged up and has been moved around a little bit within their defense. But do you like either Jahan or Curtis on him? And then what about the depth from there?
Yeah, I think, again, this is one of those things where I love the matchup. I think if you're just saying on paper who would I take? I take Terry, I take Jahan over both of their corners. I think the issue is like the state of the offense, specifically with Sam Howell. Like, much like we're kind of more confident in the matchup with our corners because of the quarterback, I think the issue there is that our quarterback's struggling a little bit. The offensive line is struggling a little bit. So what can you do to maximize those groups would be my question. And that's why I'm not super confident in what they do. And Fred Smoot says this all the time on our other show that we do, is you're a prisoner to your quarterback. And I think that's especially true this game. These guys are prisoners to their quarterbacks, and I think that favors the defense in both matchups.
All right, that is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman here on the Team 980, 106.7 The Fan, a burgundy and gold game day. Danny Rouhier, again, going to join us coming up at 12:30. Also a reminder that coming up after the game, about 90 minutes after the final whistle, give or take.
Yeah, give or take.
It's
depending.
Not a hard time, but roughly 90 minutes after the whistle or the game goes final. We will be back on YouTube for our instant reaction show. It's about 30 minutes. We give you our first take of the game, if you will. No pun intended. No first takeage. Just it's the first one. That's why we call it the instant reaction.
I gotcha. Okay. All right.
The instant reaction from the game, and then coming up this week, our pod schedule is going to be obviously a little bit different because of the Thursday nighter. But we will be back here. The Take Command pregame show starts 6:30 at Tap Sports Bar. Coming up on Thursday, I will be live for the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 here at MGM starting at 4. So plenty of coverage from us as we obviously react to this game and then ultimately get you set for the Bears and Commanders on Thursday. So make sure you're subscribed on whether you're an audio person for your podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, the free Odyssey app, or if you're a video person, full episodes of Take Commander at 106.7 The Fan. We get back, though, speaking of The Fan, co-host of Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan, Danny Rouhier joins us here on the Take Command pregame show. Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. He is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. And joining us now on the hotline is Danny Rouhier, who, of course, hosts Grant and Danny. Weekdays 2 to 6:30 on 106.7 The Fan, and then turns into Super Dad on the weekends where he gets to go watch some fantastic youth soccer. Danny, can we get a score update on your kids' soccer game?
So it is fantastic, but only on one side. Our opponents are excellent. They're up 9-0 at this stage. It is what we like to refer to as a shooting gallery. There are hanged heads. There is apathy. There is irritation. There is focus on a post-game snack, which frankly is not deserved from our home side. But this is where we are. But at least it's in Fredericksburg, only 90 minutes away with some traffic for an early morning get-up as well.
How old is your son?
He is 10, going on 3.5.
So this is this travel? Is this travel soccer?
It is indeed.
Oh my gosh! You got some money invested. You got some time invested. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
All of that good stuff, and it always feels like it's money well spent when it's somehow 95 degrees here in Fredericksburg. It's a different climate down here. I don't know if you guys have been recently.
No,
but
can't say I have.
I'm roasting as our boys get roasted.
All right, well, we wish you the best. We'll distract you at least for the next 10 minutes or so with letting you talk some football, which, there's no irritation around the Commanders at all after a 37-3 game last week. How much stock are you putting into this one, considering what did happen last week?
So a lot, guys. Not in terms of a win or a loss. If you end up going on the road and play well and lose to Philly, I think a lot of teams would do that this weekend, right? So to me, it's about adjustments that are made. I know we spoke to Logan this week about some of the things that we were anticipating or hoping to see that were different. If it's a similar shooting gallery, frankly, and Sam Howell's getting hit in the 20s, right? 9 sacks, 15 quarterback hits last week. You just can't live that way. I don't mean an offense that way, but he's not going to make it through the season if that kind of thing continues. If we see some adjustments today where there's better protection, where Sam Howell's getting rid of the football, I think those are encouraging signs. If you ask me before the season starts, right, you'll be 2-2 through 4 games, playing Chicago, maybe the worst team in the NFL, on a Thursday night. I would take that sight unseen. How we got there may not have been the most ideal way to get there, guys, with last week's beatdown, but there's still an opportunity here, right? It still counts as one loss in that column. If those adjustments are made really specifically on offense, right, whether, maybe you don't move the ball as well against a pretty good Eagles, a formidable group, but if there's better protection and Hal's not getting hit, which has kind of been the theme through these 3 games, I'll feel a lot better.
No, absolutely. I think kind of we all feel the same way. We need to see that protection improve. We need to see that get better. Is there a particular matchup you're most excited to watch here on the defensive side of the football?
So for watching on defense, Logan?
Yes.
Well, excited may not be the right term, but I want to see this secondary hold up against these excellent receivers. They complement each other so well, and Brown and Devontae Smith. Brown is obviously so big and physical, can do a little bit of everything. Smith just has destroyed, as Ethan Washington's lunch over his career. He is a ultra fast, super smooth player who again has just torched them. So I want to see how well they hold up in terms of the back end, right? Because I think you're going to have to commit some extra resources to slow down this excellent run game. Try to harass Jalen Hurts a little bit. So I'm looking for Forbes. I'm looking for Fuller. Looking for St. Hughes. What kind of day do they have here? Playing against, again, a complete football team with some excellent offense.
Danny Rouhier, host of Grant and Danny, is with us here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980 on a burgundy and gold game day. One thing that we haven't talked about yet on the show, Danny, and I'm sure you guys would have talked about it on your show this week, is the kind of defensiveness that came out of Ashburn this week. EB a little bit in his press conference, Ron to an extent. What do you made about the because they are 2-1, and there is a little bit of or are we really upset after one game against a really good team where you had a flukish number of turnovers and sacks based off the entirety of NFL history? What did you make of kind of the mood and the contentiousness in some of the press conferences this week with the Commanders coaches?
So 2 things. One, it's now 10-0. Secondly, I didn't like it, guys. I'll be honest with you. There were 2 things that I wasn't really a huge fan of. Now, if Eric Bieniemy has a master stroke scheme that's ingenious and adjustments are made, he was just being coy with us, pretending to not know how many sacks Sam Howell has taken this year and simply saying, no, stay the course. And I'm going, no, please don't stay the course because your quarterback's been hit more than any quarterback in the history of this game. If there are all those adjustments, egg on my face. I really did not like Ron Rivera's answer one of those times. I don't know if you guys have kind of harped on it at all, but it was that, it's year 4. A lot of people can't get over that. Well, I can't get over that. I absolutely cannot get over that. The team that you're playing this week basically did everything they could to lose a game at the end of 2020 to go 4-11-1, and are now a perennial Super Bowl contender, having, gone to a Super Bowl last year. Cincinnati was bad to good during that time frame. By the way, now 11-0. Miami has gotten really, really good in this short time frame. So we need to not act like we had this unlimited scope and scale. You just sort of mold around the edges and try to get things right. That's a good year 1 attitude to it. That's what you have. That's not a year 4 type of thing. So I really didn't like those kind of answers. And you're right, Craig. If you're 2-1, or you are 2-1 rather, if the answers were more like, hey, we're not in a bad place. We are 2-1. We're frustrated like you guys. We don't like to lose that way. That's embarrassing at this level to get the doors blown off and lose by 34 points. That's not who we are. We'll redouble our efforts and kind of come back. I didn't like either of those responses from 2 pretty important guys in the Washington organization.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, because, one of the things that stuck out to me is just how upset fans were after the loss. I think a lot of people were like, I don't think they expected them to be in this position, this team to be in this position after this, for over the first 3 games. Where do you stand on that from an emotional standpoint, and why are people so upset? Is it just the history of it, or, what's going on with that?
Again, it's a great question, Logan. You burned yourself one serving the bone broth. I would say, it makes you revisit, because we're expecting the anvil to drop, Acme style, or Looney Tunes or whatever. We're expecting the other shoe or whatever you want to call it, something bad to happen, because we've been conditioned that way for, 30-plus years. But it makes you revisit. You've beaten 2 teams that aren't particularly good. One may be among the worst teams in football. And some of those glaring holes that we didn't really care about in weeks 1 and 2 were the same problems in week number 3. And now you're going, were those 2 wins fraudulent? Is this really not that good of a group? Are they really not ready to compete for, in prime time? So I think that's part of it. You just get embarrassed like that. I think of so many different times when I used to go to games all the time, spending my hard-earned money. I remember getting shut out and screamed at by Dallas Cowboy fans, and I'm going, I paid for this. There's a resentment that builds up there a little bit. So you guys are right. It's good perspective. It is 1 loss, whether you lose by a point or 34, as the case was. It's still only 1. It doesn't define your season. Your response does. So they can do an awful lot to kind of put a deposit in the bank here by playing a lot better today. And the opportunity's still in front of them. Again, I keep coming back to this. If through 5 weeks, and I know I'm sort of counting my chickens here against Chicago, but through 5 weeks they're 3-2. That's not a very Washington start. We do 2-5 around here. We do 3-6 starts, and then we sort of figure it out from there. To be 3-2 through the kind of first third of the season, I think would be outstanding and going a long way to making this feel like, hey, this is a different regime and a different time.
I think the other part of it, Danny, that upset people, and certainly I don't know, I made me check myself, was it was the first time that Eric Bieniemy ever did anything that some of us didn't like. Where it's this has been the smoothest of sailing. It's everything's new because EB's here. And then he gives some answers that feel very familiar in ways that we don't like. And you're like, wait a second. I thought you were the guy that's going to change everything. And I think that might have struck a chord with some people as well.
Yeah, Craig, I think it's a smart point. So all offseason, you know me, I'm always very calm and level-headed. And
notoriously so.
No, if anything, I'm too reasonable. No, but during the offseason, guys, when you're building the roster and formulating the team, there's a lot of us that follow this thing are raising our hands going, hey, you got a neophyte quarterback who's got a history of taking a lot of hits. That should be governing how your entire offseason approach is going. And it didn't seem to. It was a readily available day 1 lineman that Kansas City had no interest in bringing back, in Andrew Wiley, an oft-injured center, and a couple internal answers at guard. If it's me and I'm in charge, and I shouldn't be in charge of anything, including, sounds like the soccer game, by the way, 12-0. What shouldn't be happening is me making these kinds of decisions. But if I've got a neophyte quarterback, I never stop spending on the offensive side of the ball. That's pass-catching running backs. That's more guys that have caught passes at tight end. Excellent offensive linemen, whether it be a draft or trade or free agent signing or otherwise. I'm not going to cobble something together. And that, again, was part of the response that bothered me so much about Rivera this week when he said, well, it's a new offensive line. Well, why did you do a new offensive line? Because the one you assembled last year wasn't very good? So my screaming was kind of done in roster formulation time here when it comes to that. So, if you're paying attention to this thing, you're preconceived, or you're kind of leading into the season, your notions of the weaknesses have borne out to, in fact, be the weaknesses. And that confirmation, I think, goes a long way, maybe, Craig, to provide some of that negative energy we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of what you're expecting from the day, who do you got in the victory, or who got in the game?
So I think Philadelphia wins this one, guys. To me, it feels like the first matchup they had last year, that 24-8 type game, where Philly's offense hasn't really hit the ground running just yet. I'm wondering if we're going to find out a story pretty soon about Jalen Hurts and him maybe not being 100%. He's still great. I'm not telling you he's not, but he's not playing at that MVP level that he has or that he was at last year. But I do think Philly's defense is going to have their way at this point with Washington's offense. I feel like it's a 26-9 kind of game, and we're going to be asking some questions. But again, it'll just be the second loss, and they'll still have plenty of season ahead of them to kind of get right and get rolling. Rivera's history has been poor start, excellent middle, where they really kind of get rolling and start playing physical and imposing their will, and then you sort of see where you are in December and January. That feels like the case to me, but if you can get out of that, winning 3 out of the first 5 games, I think they're in pretty good shape.
That will be the test today, and then of course you don't want to, as you said, don't want to count your chickens. But Thursday against Chicago, if that doesn't go well, we're having a completely different conversation. Danny will be a part of the conversation on 106.7 The Fan, of course, with GP from 2 to 6:30 weekdays. Danny, thank you for your time, sir, and we're so sorry to return you to your son's massacre.
No, it's all good. A goal from the red team just got nullified due to offside, so it's
Ooh.
not 13-0. It's still 12.
Okay.
I will say, both of you guys, you look like you're getting a little soft around the middle. I'd recommend exercising during the commercial breaks. You're getting a little pudgy.
Yeah, it's important. Exercise is important.
Logan does stretch often during commercial breaks, but that has more to do with the 10 years he played in the NFL and the state of his back than anything else. All right. Goodbye, Danny.
Have a good one, Danny.
That is Danny Rouhier with us here on the Take Command pregame show. Coming up next, we will check in with the guys back in studio for the Burgundy and Gold Game Day live show, get their predictions and keys to the game, and then hand it off to them for the in-game show. Of course, Doc Walker coming with the post-game. Don't go anywhere. Long day of football ahead here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. wrapping up the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, which is now pretty darn full here at MGM National Harbor, just moments away from kickoff of Commanders and Eagles, and of course the rest of the 1 o'clock window. With Logan Paulsen, I am Craig Hoffman, also streaming live on YouTube, where we'll see you after the game, about 90 minutes after the final whistle, for our instant reaction show. All right, Logan, we got keys to the game. We got our players to watch.
Yeah.
We got our predictions.
Lots of stuff
and to do all that with us, we welcome in back in our D.C. studios, Denton Day and Linnell Willingham, who will take you through the game on the Team 980 for Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live. Fellas, how we doing this afternoon?
Happy football. What up, boys?
Oh, Linnell made it this week.
Look at Linnell. You did it, bud.
That is cute. Cuter than you.
As usual, you did it to yourself. All right, let's start off with our players to watch. Linnell, we'll have you go first.
It was for me. I'm going to go with Cam Curl. Eagles only have
Love
4
it.
wide receivers active today, so I'm expecting to see a healthy dose of Dallas Goedert. How he matches up with him, I think will be huge in stopping the Eagles' pass game.
Denton?
I'm going with Jahan Dotson. I expected him to have a big season this year, and at least the first couple weeks of the season, it hasn't really been that. So I'm hoping that this is the game where he's able to get the ball, get in space, and make some plays.
Yeah, for me, it's Cody Barton. I know we talked about him already. Did I steal your guy?
I'm going to have to think of another player.
No,
now.
I'm going to go Jamin Davis. Actually, I misspoke. I meant to say Jamin.
Oh, okay,
Davis.
sure.
So
what a teammate this guy is.
Jamin Davis, I think he's been playing good football the last couple of weeks. He's been playing fast and physical, and with Swift, the way he's been running, the way this offensive line's been blocking, he's going to have to be very, very physical downhill and kind of carry this group, I think, from just a guy who's going to make a ton of plays. And while also making sure that he's not selling the farm to stop the run and being ready for some of those play-action hole shots. So I think that he's going to have a big game this week.
So I'm going to stunningly go Cody Barton because he has all of the same responsibilities and not the track record this year that Jamin does of playing well. Like, he's got to fit runs faster. He's got to make sure he's where he's supposed to be. If he's going to be out there for 100% of the snaps with that green dot, he's got to make sure everyone else is organized. And this is an offense that stresses the second level of the defense at a very high level because of how well they run it, because their O-line is so great at getting off those initial double teams and getting to the second level, and because they do try to run a lot of those crossers in behind on play action. And can Cody Barton, who was really brought here in many ways to cover. Like, that is the thing that he's supposed to do well. Can he make a play or two dropping off into coverage? I think that is going to be super key today. Speaking of keys, all right, here's how I want to frame our key to the game. Like, I want a statistical area where, like, if the Commanders can do this thing, or if they can hold the Eagles to that, I feel confident that they're going to win. That's how we're going to frame our key to the game here.
Spicy.
So, Linnell, I feel like this is right up your alley.
Right up my alley.
Although last week you said something about a score and then you had to jump through a table. Did that ever happen, by the way?
Oh, I'm in one piece. So, no, it did not.
Oh, shocking.
I'm bummed.
All right. We'll get that organized. I'm not going to let you off the hook for that. What do you got for this one, though? Give me a key to the game.
I think Washington overall has to make Philly one-dimensional. You said go with a stat. I'm saying they have to hold Philadelphia under 85 yards rushing. If they could do that and make Philadelphia one-dimensional, their passing offense has not gotten off to a good start here in the early portion of the season. So if they make them one-dimensional, they'll have a shot.
Who's up, Denton?
Yeah, let's go, Denton. Let's keep it around the ring in the same way.
I'm going to say make the Commanders' offense two-dimensional. If Brian Robinson touches the ball 20-plus times, I think the offense is doing well.
I think that's a great one.
20 times? That's a lot of times, though.
I mean, obviously there's the old, causation correlation deal with running the football where, like, if he gets that many touches, it probably means they're up and able to run it. So, but I think from, Denton, to your point, like, from a game plan standpoint, like, getting him involved is important. Logan?
Yeah, I think so, too. I would say, I mean, Linnell said stopping the run, right? That was his.
Yeah.
And that's mine, and I want to say that. But I'm going to say something different.
I mean, do you think it has to be to the extent of 85 yards? Like, I think they can be a little bit more lenient than that and still win. But
more efficient against the run. I think, like, that. I want Jalen Hurts to throw the football. And I know that sounds crazy because he was, like, the best player in the Super Bowl last year. But just based on what I've seen from the offense last year, I want that. And also, I'd like the defensive line to create a little bit more pressure. That's something I think is also really, really important. If you can disrupt him, if they can go toe-to-toe with this Phillies offensive line, I think they're going to be really in a good spot to win this football game.
All right, I'm trying to get creative here, which is always dangerous. But, like, the combined number of sacks and turnovers last week was 13 for Sam Howell alone, right? 9 sacks, 4 interceptions. it feels silly to say like 5 or 3 or something, because if it's 3 picks, then like there's a very slim chance they win the game. But if they can keep that number under 4, I think they've got a shot. Like I don't see how they're not competitive if that number is less than 4.
Right.
Obviously, if it's no sacks and 4 picks and half of them are pick sixes, like that's going to change it. So there's not no chance. But to me, like getting that down and helping Sam out is a huge key to them today, and will probably mean that a lot of other things happen in a good way to incubate him and insulate him into a place where he can perform well. All right, last but not least, let's pick the game. Denton, get us started.
31-20. I think, unfortunately, Philadelphia wins and the team drops to 2-2.
Yeesh. All right, Denton. All right, Linnell.
I can go twice if you want.
Yeah, Denton, go again.
Denton, that one stunk. Do a different one. No, Linnell, what you got?
I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to pick Washington, 21-19. Jalen Hurts has turned the ball over 3 times in the last 2 weeks. If they can force a turnover, keep it low scoring, and just come out and play respectable football, I don't think Philadelphia is that much better than we are.
All right.
I actually was going to take Washington, but now that Linnell's done it, I don't think I can do it. Like just because like I don't trust Linnell's insight at all.
Yikes.
No. So I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm going to say Washington. I'm going to say Washington 24-20 for the same reason that Linnell said. I for whatever reason, this matchup feels good to me, and I don't know if I'm just out of my mind, but like I'm excited for this game today.
The fighting styles match up.
We've all been out of our mind once or twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Denton. Appreciate that.
The Eagles have a fantastic defensive line, and this Washington offensive I don't want to say like it's on the line, but like the Washington offensive protection unit gives me
anxiety.
The heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. Totally reasonable.
I am very nervous about the ability to protect Sam Howell. And I'm actually a little scared of, like, are we getting to the point with him, if today goes badly, that there is starting to be a loud rumble for, like, do you need to go to Brissett or anything like that? Like, and I don't want to be – I'm not trying to jump the gun on that, but, like, we know that's coming if Sam can't figure this problem out. The idea is he's got to grow each and every week. Yeah. You got to start to see some of that growth as we get here into week 4 and the second quarter of the season. All right, Denton and Linnell have you covered for the in-game show. You can give them a call, give your thoughts during the game at 301-230-0980. Logan and I will see you after the game, about 90 minutes after, on YouTube at 106.7 The Fan, at the Team 980. Thanks for listening to the Take Command pregame show. Burgundy and Game Day Live is next.
Hey.